On today's episode of Locked On Canadiens, if the Atlantic Division is so mid, why does Montreal get most of the flack?
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to episode 1187, Crosby, of Locked On Canadiens. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day and for subscribing wherever you get podcasts. Doing that supports the show and ensures you don't miss an episode. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I'm Ian Boisvert, also known as Maybe It's Ian. I'm joined, as always, by the incomparable Laura Saba, the actor Stick. Laura, how are we feeling the day after? We're recording a day after that big win. Is that still buzzing for you? Do you still feel good about that?
I still do. In fact, you should listen to our last episode about it because it's so rare that we get to cover a win. Definitely check it out. We don't know how many more of those we're getting.
Yeah, that's true. And it kind of leads into some of our topics for today. We want to take a look at the trade rental market for the Montreal Canadiens. They have a bunch of players who may be valuable to playoff teams on expiring contracts. Rumour Roundup makes its return with a potential new coach on the market. And I wanted to talk about how the Atlantic Division is really mid and no one seems to really care except when it's talking about how bad the Canadiens are. So we will delight in our enemy's downfall in segment 3. But let's start with the Habs trade rental market. They have a bunch of players on expiring deals who may be of some value to a team trying to make the playoffs and trying to add to their depth. We should get this out of the way first. Should the Canadiens not be anywhere near a playoff spot at the trade deadline, we're shipping these guys, right? They're gone.
Absolutely. And that's why I kind of wanted to talk about it today. Spoiler alert, this did come from a meme that Scott sent us. But I wanted to talk about it today at this point in time. And then I wanted to revisit it a couple of months from now. And then I wanted to revisit it just before the trade deadline to see how their value changes. So I don't think the Canadiens are going to be anywhere near a playoff spot around the time of the trade deadline. If they are, it'll be a pleasant surprise. It'll be a shock, maybe, even. But in the case that they're far away and there's absolutely no hope, the Canadiens should be doing whatever they can to unload these guys for picks.
Yeah, agreed. There's one player on here where I would consider keeping them. And that's Jake Evans. I think that he has been great this season. You run the risk of not exactly the perfect example, but Thomas Plekanec is off to a really great start, and then they extended him for 6 years, and then the offense immediately dried up. The thing with Jake Evans is we never really expect offense anyway, so it is what it is. That's a guy who I just think fits with what this team is trying to do. If they trade him because they get a good haul for him, I won't be heartbroken, but I'm sort of at the point where I'm considering maybe they just keep him around if he wants to stay. I know players hate negotiating mid-season, but where do you stand on Jake Evans and his future potentially in Montreal?
I think he's still relatively young too, which is a big thing. And I have a hard time seeing him not in a Montreal Canadiens jersey just because he fits so well with that, bottom 6 assignment. And the way that he plays, he's got terrible hands, but the way that he plays otherwise is phenomenal. It's definitely what this team needs in a depth player, right? And I've talked a lot about this, is that different, there's no such thing anymore in the NHL as a replacement level player. There is, you have either a good bottom 6 or a bad bottom 6, right? So when you are arming yourself with a really good bottom 6, and hopefully we're hoping that some of these prospects pan out and their top 6 is also extremely stellar, I think you're just overall a bigger threat. And I find that Jake Evans fits that so well. But the things that make us like him are also the things that a playoff team needs. And so I think any smart GM would be looking to add him if he were to be available. For me, the question is, would he come back? It's less will they trade him, it's more would he come back?
That would be fun if we can ship him off.
Get an asset.
Essentially Antoine Vermette him. I remember was it the Ducks or some team did that. I think the Ducks were involved. I think they did it actually, where they traded him to Chicago and then he immediately came back.
Yeah.
I think the other part of this that teams would like is his cap hit. $1.7 million is incredibly palatable for that kind of player. And that's going to matter when it comes to these rentals for the Canadiens because they only have one salary retention spot left. Jeff Petry's still on the hook, as is Jake Allen. Those will come off soon, but they're there for now, which means at this trade deadline, they can only retain on one deal before having to call, we can't call Arizona anymore to launder money, but that's essentially what they would have to do. But looking at that, Yoel Armia, $3.4 million cap hit. What do you think the market would be like for a guy like him?
Honestly, I think the only way he gets traded is with salary retention, because I think personally his value is pretty great, especially if you are a team looking to add for a playoff run. He's definitely the kind of guy you need in your depth, but I think the price tag still makes it steep. So they would either have to retain salary or give up too much in terms of Yoel Armia.
Yeah, no, I agree. And again, that salary retention is going to be an issue because you say the only way they're moving Yoel Armia is with salary retention. I would say that about Christian Dvorak, who I know has had a bit of a much better, play from him as of late, but almost a $4.5 million cap hit, $4.45 million. Teams aren't going to be able to get that under the cap without retention of some kind, without a third-party broker coming in to eat some of that salary. But he is a left-handed centerman, which some teams may need. Hopefully he can continue to get those face-off numbers up so he is of more value. But, would you be surprised if past the trade deadline they just couldn't find a taker for Christian Dvorak just because of that cap hit?
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I would be surprised if he gets traded just because, we're talking about that salary retention spot. I just think teams are probably not going to be asking. They're simply like, they're not opening that conversation, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you're probably right because a lot of the teams, I mean, most of the teams in the league are just at or a shade below the salary cap. Like it's not, yes, it's prorated at that point in the season. So, a team that has 800 grand in cap space in reality will have something like 3 million because that's how numbers work. I have no idea how that aspect of the salary cap works. I don't know why the NHL continues to force its fans to become tax attorneys to understand what's going on with the salary cap, but that's their prerogative, not mine. Moving on, David Savard, $3.5 million cap hit. This is a guy who I think would be particularly valuable on the trade market. He's definitely slowed down, but he's big. He has a right shot.
And he blocks shots.
He eats rubber. So like that's the kind of guy who, and I know our friend Kay over at Game Over is going to hate that I say this. He's a minute muncher. That's what he does. He eats not valuable minutes so that your team can rest and get the stars back out there. He's won a Stanley Cup with Tampa. He has that pedigree. Do you think teams would fall over themselves for a shot at David Savard? Is it or does it come in like under the Ben Sherratt sweepstakes? I think it probably does.
It does because the Ben Sherratt sweepstakes were so ridiculous.
So stupid.
That was so stupid. But, I think it's definitely, in this case, I feel that a lot of GMs value what David Savard would bring to the table in a playoff run. A lot of GMs would value the fact that, he comes off the books because he is not getting any younger. And I know the Canadiens love him, but I do think that this is the point in time where they would sacrifice him. I think out of all of these players, Jake Evans, we're assuming the Canadiens are not going to shop or allow to leave. But out of all these players, say Jake Evans doesn't get snapped up or there isn't a big offer for him, David Savard is the biggest trade piece the Canadiens have right now.
Yeah, totally agreed. I think
he deserves it. He plays well, right? If I'm David Savard and a playoff team comes calling, I'd be like, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got to be rewarding for a player to know that good teams want you. I'm sure he'd love to stay in Montreal and play in the playoffs here. That's probably just not in his future here. And I think too, like a guy like David Savard, our perceived value of him might not be particularly high, but we don't make trades. The guys who give David Savard $3.5 million are the guys who make these deals. So there's value in that player still, even though I think he's lost a bit of a step. He's definitely always banged up. He's hurt right now. I mean, he didn't play against Columbus, and he did come back for Edmonton, but I think he's still dealing with something. But Other than that, the last guy is Michael Pezzetta, and I don't know that any team would need a Michael Pezzetta for the playoffs unless you're like playing the Rangers and you want somebody to be a meat shield for Matt Rempe, but I don't even know that that's valuable in and of itself because Matt Rempe's playing in Hartford.
Right.
Yeah.
And Pizzetta's not that guy. You know what I mean?
No.
Like, that's not the guy you put in that position.
No, absolutely not. All right. We are done trading players, but when we come back, we're going to see other people trade players in the return of Rumour Roundup. We'll get to that in just a moment. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Prize Picks also invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out even if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. It's so fun and simple to use, you'll really enjoy playing. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL and get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNHL on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game. This episode is also brought to you by Game Time. I love being in the middle of the action, whether that's taking in a concert or enjoying a night at the rink. It's just more fun being there. The place where you can go to get to the events you want is Game Time. We're big fans of Game Time here thanks to their all-in pricing. There's a setting in the app that you can toggle on so Game Time tells you exactly how much you'll be paying to get in. No hidden fees. Plus, with their seat views, you know what kind of action you'll be able to see. And with their lowest price guarantee, you know you're getting the best deal for your tickets. It's for all those reasons that I went to Game Time to secure tickets for the Habs game against the Islanders in October. And even though the Canadiens lost, I had a great night out with friends and in some even greater seats at an even better price. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, Laura, we are back, and we are back with a segment that I'm so happy that people enjoy. We get comments all the time that we need to do this more. And I finally decided that if we're going to do this, we're doing this right. So I got a cowboy hat, and every time we do Rumour Roundup, the cowboy hat's going on. That's just what we're doing from now on. So welcome to Rumour Roundup. For those who might not be initiated, this is what we do here. I get a lot of garbage trade rumors on my phone through like suggested articles, and it is always the most fun to read them and to figure out whether or not this person was serious or just how fun they are, how realistic they may be. So that's what we do. We rate them on a scale of 0 to 5 yeehaws for both realism and entertainment. Are you ready, Laura?
Yes, I am very ready.
All right. I don't know if you've heard this, but Trevor Zegras and the Montreal Canadiens have been dancing a dance for months now.
Months or years?
This is starting to feel like the Matt Duchene trade saga.
Yeah.
Remember that? Montreal wasn't in on that one, but it feels like that because it just won't end. Heavy.com posted an article about a proposed trade for Trevor Zegras. The trade was 1-for-1, Kirby Dach for Trevor Zegras.
I don't get it.
I don't either, because the source on the trade was someone posted it on Puckpedia's Puck GM tool, essentially like the cap friendly armchair GM where you could post lineups. They posted this trade, and the folks over at Heavy decided that was a trade rumor. So that's what we're rolling with in this one. Realism, Laura. I have it at 0 out of 5 yeehaws. This is an insane trade offer.
Mine too. I'm at a 0 there.
Yeah, I don't see any reality right now where the Canadiens are even entertaining trading Trevor or Kirby Dach for Trevor Zegras, because I think that's at best lateral move. But who knows? I don't know what's going on with the Montreal Canadiens front office. That will be the disclaimer on all of this. We are just guessing. For entertainment, I have this at 0.0001 out of 5. Because the trade is 1-for-1, and that will always make me laugh. Other than that, there's nothing here that I find particularly fun.
Yeah, like there's no value to this rumor, whatever it is. It's not even a rumor. It's more somebody reported another person's speculation on an online website. Um, but if I'm Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon, I'm not trying to trade Kirby Dach for Trevor Zegras. I'm trying to have Kirby Dach and Trevor Zegras.
Yes. Yes. That should always be whenever you see these deals for the Canadiens at this stage of their rebuild, if they're trading a piece of the core for another piece of the core, it's not happening. It's not a reality. It was like when Pierre-Luc Dubois was on the market when he was still in Columbus, and apparently they wanted either Nick Suzuki or Cole Caulfield from the Canadiens. And obviously that's a no, because the point is to have all of these players, not just rearrange deck chairs, right? Like that doesn't do anything for anyone. So this trade, it's zero yeehaws, and honestly, a big thumbs down for just the time I had to spend reading that. So that's where we'll leave that one. Up next, Dave Penyota of the fourth period went on TSN 690 and said that a late first round pick was offered for Arber Xhekaj. I'll read his quote directly. One team wanted to offer a late first round pick for Arber Xhekaj. The Canadiens said, no thanks. We like what we have right now. What do you think about that one as far as a realism standpoint? Do you think that this could be something that happened?
Do you want me to be honest?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want you to lie to me ever.
I want 0.5 yees. Not even a yeehaw.
There's not even a haw in there. That's
not
wild.
even a haw. I'm considering the source there.
Okay.
And so that's my honest assessment of Montreal Canadiens related matters reported by the source.
Yeah. That's a fair assessment of this, I think. I will remove the source from this just for the sake of argument, right? I think it's entirely within the realm of possibility that a team would trade pick 25 through 32 for Arber Xhekaj. I think that's totally something some general manager would do and probably regret it within a few years.
Somebody saw the Zach Hyman hit and texted Kent Hughes.
Just hit Kent. Hey, you up? Like that's all that was. For an entertainment standpoint, I have this at 2 out of 5 because I always think like reporting on trades that didn't happen is kind of lame because there's no way I can prove that it would have ever happened. And also, as a reminder, it didn't happen. So like it's a nothing burger to me. Like there's nothing there.
So yeah, I'm really interested that you brought that, because were you around in the era of how the Canadiens almost got Vinny Lecavalier?
Yes, that was the one trade in mind when I had this thought was like, yeah, we traded half of our roster for Vinny Lecavalier back in the day. And that was fun because that trade is just the thought of that trade is insane.
Yeah. And it was Brian Lawton, right?
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember who the general manager in Tampa was. And it was there were so many players involved. It was PK Subban and I was just what? It was 5 players, and I think 4 of them were core players. Anyways.
Yeah.
So that's how I feel when I hear things like this.
Yeah, same. Last rumor, we got to move through this one kind of quickly here. The Canadiens may hire Jim Montgomery, recently fired Boston Bruins head coach. This one, I think it was a bit piecemeal of a rumor. So this comes from a website called Habs Fanatics, and the reasoning is somewhat sound. I will say that. Back in March, Renaud Lavoie said that Jim Montgomery is going to coach the Montreal Canadiens someday. He just thinks that that's something that will happen. Everyone has been talking about the Canadiens needing a veteran presence behind the bench, even though I think Jim Montgomery has been head coaching in Boston as long as Marty St. Louis has been in Montreal. I know Montgomery was in Dallas before that, but I don't know that he's the grizzled vet that they're after. His record with Boston, by the way, when he was fired, his overall record was 120, 41, and 23. That is prorated for 117 points in 82 games. They fired that guy. I don't understand really why they did that. Realism. Do you think that this is a thing that could happen? They bring him in not as a head coach, but maybe as part of Marty St. Louis' staff.
I'm gonna give it a 1 yeehaw, just because I feel like the Canadiens have hitched their ride to Marty. That's what they've done. They're this is our guy for at least until they contend, right? They're not doing this. And so for me, a guy like Jim Montgomery's been a head coach twice. I don't know that he's going to want to come back as an assistant coach. I know a lot of coaches do that. but I don't know that he wants to come back and be second fiddle, especially with that coaching record in Boston, right?
Yeah.
So I'm looking
He
at
doesn't
that and
need
I'm
to.
going, exactly. Like the Bruins obviously made not a panic move, but a reactionary move. I'm going to call it a reactionary move. And so, taken in context, unless he like really clashed with the front office, I don't know that he would have gotten fired. So I feel like he'd be out there looking for a head coaching position. And the Canadiens have decided Marty's their guy. So I think it's unlikely.
Yeah, as do I. The only thing about this that I think makes it possible is that good French-speaking coaches don't come around all that often. And I have in parentheses written Claude V 2.0 because they fired him and a week later he was the Montreal Canadiens head coach. So
Right.
like it's not out of the realm of possibility, but they're not firing Marty anytime soon.
How funny would it
Entertainment.
be if it was, yeah, entertainment? How funny would
Yeah.
it be if Montreal just kept like snapping up Boston coaches?
Hilarious. It would be really, really funny. They should stop hiring French ones then. That's what they should do. They just keep them out of our clutches. Entertainment, I have this at 0 out of 5 EHAs because I'm so done with the coaching narratives. And this one didn't even have a fun coffee shop rumor aspect to it that the
Oh,
last
I
one
love
did.
that one.
So I'm over it. I'm so over this. They're not hiring a coach midseason. I am certain of it.
You know what? Around 3 p.m. tomorrow, Ian. Might
Yeah.
be.
Well, now that I've dated this episode, we have to move on to our final segment. We're going to talk about why the Atlantic Division is mid and why the Canadiens seem to be getting all the flack, even though most of the other teams are also mid. And we're getting to all that in just a minute. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, we are back. I'm going to take the cowboy hat off now, I think. I'm done with, I'm all yeehawed out. We're good for that. But I
It's
hope.
a new segment now. It's a whole new segment.
Yeah,
Oh.
that's a different character. That the yeehaw guy, that's not me. That's not me. It's not Scott. It's a different guy.
I do love how that you did the ad read with the cowboy hat on though.
Yeah, I got midway through it and realized I was still wearing the cowboy hat, but that's what we do here. We commit to the bit. I want to talk about the Atlantic Division because I think Jim Montgomery getting fired has sort of prompted me to believe that this division is actually terrible.
Or
And
cursed.
Fair, also fair. But that the Canadiens seem to be getting most of the criticism in this division, despite the fact that I don't know that that's entirely warranted.
It actually grinds my gears even more because all these other teams were expected to be so good.
Exactly.
Or at least taking those steps forward and making the playoffs. The Canadiens, everybody said, and that really bothered me too, everybody said that they were going to be bottom feeders, and that hurt my feelings. But at the end of the day, like they all said this, and now why are they only talking about Montreal when those other teams are so profoundly disappointing in context?
Yeah, and I have the context. You want to roll through the standings of the Atlantic Division as we
Let's
record this?
talk about it.
Yeah, so I think the top 3 teams are legitimately good teams. That is fine. Those teams will make the playoffs because they're in the top 3. We have Florida in first at 25 points in 18 games. Toronto in second with 24 points in 19 games. And the Tampa Bay Lightning with 19 points in 16 games. They have the fewest games played in the division because I believe one of their first games got canceled or postponed due to the hurricane.
Yes, at least one. Yeah.
Right. So that's what I was like, how come they've played so few games? That's why, the weather. Yeah. So those teams I think are good. Those are good hockey teams. Those are playoff hockey teams. We will see them in April. How long we will see them in April remains to be seen.
Well, it's Toronto, so we kind of do know. Also, it is kind of funny because like Toronto's good, but like they're still having those nights where we get to make fun of them because they like, face plant against like really, really bad teams. That's really fun. So like
for weeks, they were the only team that could beat the Winnipeg Jets and then also not show up against the Columbus Blue Jackets. They're a mystifying hockey team. It's hilarious. Speaking of losing to the Columbus Blue Jackets, the Boston Bruins, who after losing 5-1 to the Columbus Blue Jackets on Monday night, decided they were done with Jim Montgomery. They're 8-9-3, 20 games played, 19 points. It seems like they think that they can be a playoff team if not for Jim Montgomery, which is kind of a crazy thought to have.
I think so.
Yeah, I think that makes no sense. The guy has done nothing but win regular season games in Toronto. Obviously, the playoffs are a different story, but they're not firing him for the playoffs. They're firing him for the 8-9-3 start.
I don't know what they're thinking, to be honest. Like this seems very much like that. Remember when Bruce Boudreau got fired for no reason?
Yes.
Well, it was like a 17-game losing streak or something like that. But
Sure.
like the underlying numbers were still good. But I think it's really funny that Boston just kind of like pulled the trigger too early.
Yeah, I mean, I think the American Thanksgiving thing gets in people's head. But they're within 2 points of a playoff spot. They're tied with Tampa for the last spot in the Atlantic, so they're not out of it, by that metric. Moving on, fifth place, the Ottawa Senators, 8-1, 17 games played, 17 points. They're exactly 500. Buffalo, 8-9-1, 17 points as well, with one more game played, so they get slotted in below Ottawa. Detroit 7-9-2, who just lost in San Jose in overtime. 18 games played, 16 points. And then you have the Montreal Canadiens, 19 games played, 16 points. I rushed through those last teams because they were all expected to take a step, steps of varying degrees, but everyone is kind of exactly where they were last year. There's really no shuffling here. The Ottawa Senators still can't seem to figure out how to play consistently well. The Buffalo Sabres, I think the Lindy Ruff project is failing again. And Detroit, I don't know that I trust the Yzer plan in Detroit. I don't know that it has any proof of concept of working anywhere other than Tampa Bay. Well, again, it's early. That team is still very young, but they were expected to take that step. And Montreal was expected to be 8th. And lo and behold, that's exactly where they are.
Yet Montreal is the one that everybody is talking about.
Yeah. And there's one stat in here that I really enjoyed. Regulation wins. That to me is the true mark of a good hockey team. Anybody can pick up loser points. It's not particularly difficult. In the regulation wins category, Florida, who's first in the division, is also first in this category. Toronto, who is also second in the division, is second in this category. Florida has 10. Toronto has 9. Third is the Tampa Bay Lightning, who are also third in the standings. And then fourth with 7 is the Montreal Canadiens. They are above Boston and Ottawa, Buffalo, and Detroit. Boston has 5. Ottawa, Buffalo, and Detroit have 6 each. Montreal has more regulation wins than most of this division, or half of this division, I should say. That I wouldn't have believed that if someone told me, because of just the way that the season feels, right? Like, does that matter to you as much as it matters to me?
It does, actually. Like, I was shocked that you said that. And so it makes me even more annoyed that this narrative that like Montreal is like the thing that's bringing the whole division down.
Yeah. Don't get us wrong. Like, Montreal isn't a good hockey team right now, but you will never hear us say anything to the contrary. But I feel like people get it wrong as far as why the Canadiens are not a good hockey team. And, they kind of get swept up in this whole, that market's going to eat them alive. They can't handle a rebuild. And I think for the most part, fans are pretty, we're a little peeved with how the season has started. But I think most fans are realizing that this is still a long process and we're not done with it yet.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I was gonna say, I think if it's like this next year, like there's gonna be people abandoning ship. There might be jerseys on the ice.
Yeah, and the thing is too, like Montreal is still in the middle of this, but Ottawa has been rebuilding for years. They're not done with it yet. Buffalo has been rebuilding for almost as long as I've been alive. They're not done yet. Detroit has been rebuilding since like 2013, and it's still not done yet. I don't think that it's fair to compare the Canadiens to those guys because Montreal just hasn't been doing this as long as those guys have. So I think this division is mid, and the Canadiens are exactly where we expected them to be. And there's really nothing else to be gleaned from the standings, except that the Canadiens are particularly good at regulation wins.
Which is kind of surprising.
Yeah, I was legitimately shocked when I saw that. So Canadiens are actually the 4th best team in the division. So that's what we have there. All right, let's head into our trivia, and then we'll get out of here. The last episode's question was, who is the highest rated skater for the Canadiens in NHL 94? The answer, and I'm going to butcher this name, Enher, EnahRrr on YouTube, got it right first. A bunch of people did get it right. It was Kirk Muller. When you booted up the game and you played as the Montreal Canadiens, he was the one taking the opening faceoff for Montreal. So Kirk Muller is the highest rated skater for the Canadiens. Lots of guesses for Vinny Domfus as well, which is not a bad guess, honestly. All right. Next question for today. Name this player. New York Rangers, Dallas Stars, Columbus Blue Jackets, San Jose Sharks, Vancouver Canucks, Carolina Hurricanes, Montreal Canadiens. I'll do that one more time. New York Rangers, Dallas Stars, Columbus Blue Jackets, San Jose Sharks, Vancouver, Carolina, Montreal. If you have the answer, put it in the comments. We will pin whoever gets it right first. But that's going to do it for us today on this episode of Locked On Canadiens. Thanks so much for tuning in and for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey, become a fantasy hockey expert, and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. My Movember campaign is still ongoing. Look in the comments. There will be a link down there, or you can head to my Blue Sky account. I will have a post there as well. We are on Blue Sky. We're making the jump. Locked On Canadiens there. Laura is at the Active Stick. I am at Maybe It's Ian. We're also on TikTok. Locked On Canadiens there as well for short clips of our episodes.
And Instagram.
And Instagram. Yes, go to Instagram as well. What are we, LO_ on?
We're Locked On Canadiens on Instagram.
Yeah, we got that handle first. Okay, good. Locked On Canadiens on Instagram. Head there and get clips of the show. All right, thanks so much for listening, and we will see you tomorrow.